I remember the time when Overwatch was the best online multiplayer game. The characters, the teamwork, the world, the rewards, and progression made it stand out, and it really pushed the arena hero shooter genre further. It got Game of the Year in 2016, and it was even able to support a pro league. Things were looking great. But here we are, with Steam reviews showing that a lot of people do not like this game, despite the player count actually being decent. So what exactly is wrong with Overwatch? I'm not going to pretend I'm the best Overwatch player. I've been on and off with this game, and my only real accomplishment was that I was 2 trophies away from getting a platinum trophy for this game. But there has been a lot of issues that resulted in a very big core gameplay changes in the past few years. The biggest change is the implementation of the 2-2-2 role lock. This was implemented mostly to get rid of the GOATS meta, which was having 3 tanks and 3 healers on a team. There's other smaller reasons, but I feel like that was like the main one. Updates started to slow down for Overwatch 1 because they were putting a lot of resources for Overwatch 2, which would feature a campaign mode. Eventually, Overwatch 2 was released as a free-to-play title that only had multiplayer but promised story mode would come soon. Overwatch 2 was basically Overwatch 1, but with more smaller barriers within the game, such as unlocking characters, converting credit into legacy items, locking a lot of cosmetics behind a price tag, and the biggest change was changing it into a 5v5 instead of a 6v6. So now it's a 1-2-2 role lock, only having each team have 1 tank. Again, there's a lot of smaller reasons behind the change, but the main reason was to combat the double shield meta. Then, a year after the release of Overwatch 2, they released only 3 short missions and cancelled their plans of a story mode entirely. Around this time, I believe the Overwatch League no longer exists. Now, the issues of a solo tank is very apparent. People don't want to play tank because they have too much pressure, as games tend to be decided depending on the tank player. And playing tank is miserable at times, as they're collecting all the debuffs and CCs possible for 20 minutes straight. And so to fix this, tanks have more HP to where they're pseudo raid bosses in certain scenarios. Blizzard applies more and more bandages to problems, and they really never solve them. In some cases, it makes them worse later. It's so bad and very frustrating as a player to where it makes me wonder if the devs actually play their game, and that's a really bad sign. It feels with each new major patch, there are more and more people in support of reverting back into a 6v6 gameplay. Game director Aaron Keller is going to have an official statement on 6v6 Overwatch, which I'm assuming is where he just goes into detail about why 6v6 won't work. But is reverting back into 6v6 really the cure that Overwatch needs? Over the course of the lifespan of Overwatch, it's clearly a hard game to balance because of the massive roster of diverse characters. Look at win rates and pick rates for different characters on different ranks, and it shows it's not universal on all ranks. For example, Echo has a 0.61% pick rate in bronze matches, but has a 1.71% in Grandmaster, almost tripled the usage rate. This is okay in my opinion, as Echo is a complex character, so a lower ranked player will likely not choose her and pick a more simplistic character like Soldier 76. What I am worried about are low pick rates, specifically for tanks, that appear low in all of the ranks. Junker Queen, at least for me, is a fun character to play as, but low pick rates in bronze rank and diamond rank, meaning no player finds value in her. I'm going to exclude Masters and Grandmasters from here on out because honestly, they don't matter anymore. They only represent maybe the top 5% of players, which is a very small minority. Their voices used to matter until the Overwatch League just self-destructed. I hate to say it, but the game's health should be measured and changed according to the majority, and the majority lies between gold and plat, with both bronze and diamond being at the extremities. For a game like Valorant that has a very active pro scene, it makes sense to make changes according to the pros, but that's no longer the case for Overwatch. Anyways, why do players find some tanks have low pick rates? Overwatch is a very situational game, so there are going to be some exceptions for each scenario or example I give, but not all tanks provide the utility needed to protect their teammates. The difference between Reinhardt with his massive shield and Junker Queen, where she gives like a small HP bump to nearby allies, is massive. The change from 6v6 to 5v5 entirely got rid of the off-tank role. Their job isn't necessarily to protect teammates, but to cause chaos, chase supports down, or whatever. Just doing your own thing as Diva or Wrecking Ball was fun and effective. And now it feels like a troll to play as a character like Doomfist or Drunken Queen because your support and damage characters need you and you alone to participate in it. All team fights, protect your healers, duel the other tank, take in all debuffs and CCs, and knowing that when you die, the other team will make significant progress on the objective. There's a lot of pressure on the tank role, and not everyone wants that type of pressure in a video game. So yes, I think it would be a good idea for the game to revert back to a 6v6. There being a second tank will allow people to be able to play as an off tank and not get easily harassed by teammates. That does mean that we have to cut back on survivability of these tanks since they were balanced as a solo tank. So that would just be like reducing their max HP, reducing any sort of like damage reduction ability. Because personally, I think the main problem with the tank role in its current state is that they are the center of attention, both in terms of enemies throwing like antis, sleeps, stuns, damage, knockback, or any sort of like CC debuffs, and also all the buffs such as like healing, info, speed boost, or whatever. Somehow, an arena shooter became a PvP raid with some minor side objectives. By bringing back the second tank, all the total incoming damage and CC will be distributed, making it a less excruciating experience for tanks. Leads to the next big change that I noticed, especially at the launch of Overwatch 2. Hot take, but I think the healing output is absurdly high to a point where it's unhealthy. I'm sorry to all the Mercy 1 tricks that have like 30k heals every match, but you've literally created a raid boss that will not die. And it's not just Mercy, it's all the support except for maybe Lucio, I don't know. But especially in the current state of Overwatch, it feels like the momentum of matches are directly correlated whether or not your tank is alive or not. And so with all the focus on tanks, it's only natural that both your supports will be actively supporting your tank. Let's be real, support players back at launch were pretty bad because we lacked awareness of HP of our teammates. Support players nowadays are just really good and are able to save teammates really well, maybe a little too well. And so when you have two really good healers on each team supporting the tanks, it's really hard to have your damage output be greater than the healing output to capitalize on mistakes. Making the damage roll to temporarily reduce the enemy healing received is honestly a good step, but I would take it a step further and just across the board, reduce the healing output so teams are rewarded for capitalizing mistakes. There will always be a meta no matter what. In the most ideal world, every character is balanced with an equal pick rate and win rate. It's ideal, but it's not fun. It's fun playing or abusing a character or synergy that's really strong. As long as the current meta isn't oppressive and breaks people's way of playing, then I think it's healthy for the game. What's not okay is when you change core gameplay mechanics that don't solve the issue, completely changing characters that don't solve the issue, and introducing new characters that don't challenge the meta and instead empowers it. Constantly doing hot fixes and patch notes makes the game feel erratic and negatively impacts the competitive integrity. If Blizzard doesn't want to properly test out their fixes or patches themselves, then bring back PTR. Ideally, PTR shouldn't exist because Blizzard will do their own in-house testing without, I guess, leaking it out in the public, but we don't want a situation like this past week where there were a lot of changes that weren't stated in the patch notes. Encourage people to swap characters in the middle of games. They finally changed it to where certain characters won't be locked in the battle pass, which negatively impacted the competitive integrity, since some characters have clear counters and it basically was pay to win. We don't need characters that offer tons of utility that makes them irreplaceable. I'm looking at you, Ana. We don't want to, in a sense, power creep our existing roster. My boy Winston legit still only has a jump and shield ability from Overwatch 1, and he's competing with characters like Ramatra that can put up a barrier, punch people, shield himself, do an AoE damage, ground flyers, and effectively poke people from range. It's okay to release characters that offer one or two pieces of utility that effectively challenge the meta. Thus, it still makes certain base characters not feel as dated compared to the newer ones. I always thought of Overwatch as a fast-paced game that requires you to adapt on the fly using knowledge that you've experienced over the years. However, Overwatch has gone through many different phases where it feels like a different game every year, in a really bad way. Yes, there are games like Fortnite where it's like a new game every season, but at least it's consistent within that season and your bare bones survival knowledge is still effective. Overwatch going from like open queue to role lock to 5v5 to whatever it is right now is not healthy. Every month there seems to be something horrible with the game state. What Overwatch really needs is a unifying vision with both the general audience of players and the devs. The devs need to be committed in making the core gameplay as consistent and enjoyable as it can be. I don't really care about microtransactions, do whatever, it's horrible anyways, and there's no fixing that. But the core gameplay is something that other games that try to compete with Overwatch cannot replicate. And I really believe that bringing back that second tank to alleviate the overall distribution of healing, damage, buffs, and debuffs and whatnot will be healthy for the game. Of course, there's a lot of other things that needs to be tweaked, but those are more apparent as you playtest it more, which feels like this past year, it doesn't feel like they are really playing the game. It feels like they just log in to make sure it displays like the right amount of damage, then log out, rather than playing it with like different comps and a variety of maps and see it's something that they like. But hey, what do I know? I'm not in Blizzard HQ directing or playtesting any of this. But as a player, I really hope that a game like Marvel Rivals does really good so I can have that feeling of excitement playing an arena hero shooter again. Thank you for watching, make sure to like and subscribe to this video if you like this type of content, and if you have any suggestions for any game that you want me to play, you can leave a comment down below, or come join the Discord in the link below that I'm active in. See you guys later.